So now we're going to look at converting between metric conversions and metric English conversions. This is something that's necessary here because in America we are still stuck on the English system where the whole scientific community uses the metric system. So there's going to be times where you not only have to convert between two metric conversions, but also between metric and English conversions. This right here is a list of some of those conversions. They are given. I don't expect you to know many of the English conversions by heart. This whole factor label method, you have to use the factor and label method to solve these problems. There's a reason behind this. You're going to have to use the factor label method later when we do something called mole conversions and stoichiometry, so it's better to learn the method with an easier thing like converting between units than to learn, two hard things at the same time. But the factor label method uses fractions. We're going to draw them as I call them tic-tac-toe boards. But the key of the factor label method would be if you're in math class and you're trying to get rid of that fraction, 1/2. The easiest way to do that would be to multiply it by something called its reciprocal. And the key to a reciprocal is it is the opposite of the given. And when things are opposite each other in a fraction, they cancel out. So we're going to use that whole idea in this factor label method, but instead of canceling out numbers, we're going to cancel out units. So when we look at these problems, you're always going to be given one number. You always start with what you're given. So before you do anything, I'm going to take the 3,500 kilometers, that is what I was given in my problem. I'm going to include the unit, that is very important. And I'm going to set up what we call a tic-tac-toe board. You may see in some textbooks they set it up in a fraction form, like this. And then they do, multiply by another fraction and so on. If that's more comfortable for you to do it in the fractions, you are more than welcome. I just prefer to do it kind of in this tic-tac-toe board because things stay a little bit neater. So under here, under the 35 kilometers, is a 1. That's what's supposed to be there. 1s are given in chemistry, so you don't have to write that. I prefer not to write it, but if that's going to bother you that box is empty underneath the 3,500, go ahead and write a 1 under that. So I'm going to read and I'm going to say, it's asking me to convert. So it says how many meters are in 3,500 kilometers. So it's asking me to convert from kilometers to meters. That's what it's asking me to do. So this whole process is dependent on the ratio or the conversion factor between kilometers and meters. So if I look right here in my little chart, I see that I'm given that 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. And you can write that on your paper or not. If you can just look it up in the chart, that's fine. But this is my conversion factor that I'm going to use to do this conversion, to change from one unit to the other. I can do it in one step. There's one math step needed to do this conversion. So I'm going to have one more set of boxes on the other side. Now here's the key with the whole reciprocal thing. If I have a kilometer here that I need to get rid of, using the same principle as up here in order for things to cancel out, I need to put a kilometer down here. Because when things are opposite each other in a fraction, they can be crossed out. So notice I did not cross out the number because there is no 3,500 on the bottom. You're going to look at the units for the crossing out. The units are going to tell you what's going to go on the bottom, what's going to go on the top. So now that I have kilometers on the bottom, I'm going to put on the top what I'm looking for or what I'm going to try to get my number to convert into. And in that case, it's my other unit here, which is a meter, goes on the top. So notice the only thing I have written in this tic-tac-toe board now is units. I don't even do the numbers yet. The numbers are kind of secondary. So what I'm going to do now that my units are set up is I'm going to place the numbers. Now here's the key. The number as it's written here in this conversion factor has to be matched up with the same unit when you put it in the problem. That's going to determine whether you multiply or divide. So I see that kilometer has a 1 with it. So in my problem, I'm going to make sure the 1 is with the kilometer. And I see that the meters has a 1,000. And I'm going to make sure that is with the meters. So that's how I know that the 1000 goes on the top here, because it has to be with the meters. They have to stay paired. Now, when things are on the top next to each other, we always multiply. So I'm going to do 3,500 times 1,000. I'm going to get a really big number here. I'm going to get lots of zeros. So remember, when we have really big numbers, we like to put them in scientific notation. It just makes things a lot easier. So this is going to be 3.5, and if we count, it's going to be 10 to the 6th. Now, my unit should be very easy to see because it should be the only unit not crossed out in my tic-tac-toe board. And I see that my only unit not crossed out is a meter, and that should match what I was asked for in the problem, which was a meter. So we're all set up. So if you've set this problem up right, your final unit, the unit left uncrossed out in the whole tic-tac-toe board, should match the unit you were asked to solve for in the problem, and then you should be all set. So the nice thing is there's going to be steps that are repeated every single time with these. So for example, we start number 22. You always, always, always start with what you're given. So what I'm given is 45,000 kiloliters. So I'm going to do 45,000 kiloliters. I'm going to sit my tic-tac-toe board up. Sometimes you don't know how long you have to make it, so just kind of guess. It doesn't matter if it's longer than it should be. Now the problem says how many milliliters are in 45,000 kiloliters. So I'm starting in kiloliters, and I'm going to go up to the top where I see my conversions, and I'm going to see, do I have a kiloliter to milliliter? I have a kiloliter to liter, but I don't see a kiloliter to liter anywhere. What I do see is a liter to milliliter. So what's going to happen sometimes is you're going to have to do double steps. So what I can do, based on these conversions right here, is I can go from kiloliter to liter, and then liter to milliliter. It's actually going to be two separate steps here. The number of steps and what you do kind of depends on the conversions that you're given or the conversions that you know. Sometimes there's more than one path you can take to get the right answer. So I'm going to need to know two conversion factors. I'm going to need to know that 1 kiloliter equals 1,000 liters, and 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. And I just, again, got that right from the chart. So this little path here is going to be helpful to kind of you figure out what your steps are. So I'm starting in kiloliters. My first step is going to be to take it to liters. So it's going to be like one conversion at a time. I'm first going to go to kiloliters to liters using this conversion, and then liters to milliliters using this conversion. So it's going to be two steps. So again, if I want to get rid of kiloliters, which I do, I don't want that present at the end, I put it opposite. So I'm going to put it right down here. And when I put that unit opposite, I can cross it out, and now it's gone, which is what I want. I know I'm going to need one more step, so I'm just going to add it to the end here. Now, my first path, remember, my first conversion is kiloliters to liters. So what I'm looking for in this first step, what I'm solving for is liters, and that's what goes on the top, not milliliters. Then I use my conversion that I've picked out, and remember that it has to match. Kiloliters has a 1, so 1 goes on the bottom. Liters has 1,000, so 1,000 has to go on the top. Okay, next I'm going to go, my next conversion, liters to milliliters. So the same principles apply though. Liters I want to get rid of, so I put it opposite on the bottom, cancels out. What I'm solving for, milliliters on the top. And if I take a quick look, milliliters is the only thing not crossed out. Look, crossed out, crossed out, crossed out, crossed out. The only thing not crossed out is milliliters, and that's what I've asked to solve for, so I know I'm on the right track. Again, the numbers in the units have to match, so the 1 is with the liters, 1,000 is with the milliliters, so that's why it's on top. The number that you're multiplying doesn't always go on top. It has to pair, it has to be with the right unit. So because we have all ones on the bottom, I'm simply just going to multiply the three numbers on the top. I'm going to do 45,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. And obviously I'm going to get a great big number, so I'm just going to put this right into scientific notation. So I get 4.5 times 10 to the 10th. And my unit is very, very easy. The only thing not crossed out, milliliters, which is what the problem asked me for. So let's do another one. So we have now 210 centimeters. That's what I'm given. Remember, you always start with what you're given, include the unit, and make your tic-tac-toe board. It says your cross-country skis are 210 centimeters long. What is their length in inches? So I'm going to go up to the top, start looking to see what I can find. And I see that we have inches to centimeters. And that's going to work for what I'm asking for. So I only really need one conversion here. I'm going to go from centimeters to inches. So again, sometimes it's one step, sometimes it's two steps. It can be 3 or more steps. It just depends on what your conversions are. So I'm going to use the 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeter conversion. Follow the same rules. If I want to get rid of centimeters, I put it opposite and cross out. I put the unit I'm looking for, inches, at the top. And again, inches is what's asked for in the problem. Inches is the only thing not crossed out. I make sure my numbers and unit match. So watch what happens. This time, a 1 goes on the top because the conversion is 1 inch, and 2.54 now goes on the bottom because that's supposed to be with centimeters. They have to stay matched. 2.54 is with the centimeters. So when you have a 1 over something, or you have something on the bottom, a number on the bottom, you simply divide, and you should get 82.68 inches. So again, the 2.54 centimeters went on the bottom because that is how the conversion is written. You do not change the number in the unit. They always have to stay paired. Maybe at the top of your paper, I see that right here, 5,280 feet are in 1 mile. Looking at the chart, I need centimeters and I need miles. You're going to need a couple. Attention to is in this little chart here, it's 3.3 feet in a meter. Sometimes people in this chart, what it's paired with, look it up real quick, is 100 chart. And I'm going to look for things that involve gallons and cups. So I see 1 gallon to liters, gallons to quarts, quarts to cups. So this time you actually have an extra. This one here, the gallons to liters, you don't really need. So sometimes you're going to have things you actually don't need in the chart, and you just start that it's 0.25 gallons per quart. If I go back real quick to my chart, it's 4 cups. Okay, we'll do a couple more. How many feet are in 3 miles? So again, I start with what I'm given, 3 miles. The abbreviation for miles is MI. You can't just put an M, that's actually a meter. And I'm going to go from miles to feet. So if I go backwards, mile goes on the bottom, cross it out. I'm going to go miles to feet using the conversion. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. So miles is already crossed out. What I'm looking for, feet, goes on the top. And it's just a 1-stepper here. Now remember, the number and the unit have to match. So 1 is with mile. That goes on the bottom now. 5,280 is with feet. That goes on the top. I'm going to multiply, and I should get 1.58 times 10 to the 4th. So again, this is a big number. Remember, if it's 3 or above, 3 decimal places or 3 zeros, you have to put it in scientific notation. Okay, this one. How many centimeters are in 3 miles? So again, I'm starting with 3 miles. Start with what you're given. Make your tic-tac-toe board. So if I go back things here when you look at your chart. So if I start in miles, make my little path, I can go from miles to feet, and then feet to meters, and then meters to centimeters. But there's actually an alternate version. You can go miles to feet, and then feet to inches if you wanted, and inches to centimeters. Doesn't matter which one you did. Either one you do, you should still get the same answer. I'm going to stick with the first one we talked about. There's really no reason why, just because. So you're going to need 1, 2, 3 steps here. If you count the arrows, it tells you the steps. So the first thing I'm going to do, remember, just one at a time. So I'm going to concentrate on going miles to feet. The conversion is right up here. We already looked it up. So if I want to get rid of miles, put it on the bottom, cross it out. Miles is gone. Especially in these long ones, you want to make sure you cross out the units. The unit I'm looking for, feet, goes on the top. And then I'm using this conversion again, 5,280 feet, that goes on the top, in 1 mile. So now I'm here. So now I'm going to go from feet to meters. What I want you to 3 feet in the meter, that's actually the guess. It's actually 3.3. So again, if I want to get rid of feet, it goes on the bottom. Everything is opposite, because when the feet units are opposite each other, you can cross them out. The unit you're looking for, meter, goes on the top, and the conversion, remember, is 3.3 feet in 1 meter. So the number and the unit have to match. So I'm going to do 1 on the top now, because it's 1 meter in 3.3 feet. So if you're still confused about why one's on the top and the other one's on the bottom, you have to pay attention to what the numbers are in the conversion. How it's written to be the same in your little tic-tac-toe board. You can't change the pairings. And now I'm going to do my last step, which is meters to centimeters. So again, meters on the bottom so you can cross it out. What I'm looking for, centimeters on the top. And the conversion, centimeters, so that goes on the top, in 1 meter. So now we did a lot of units here. We put a lot of units in, but if you pay attention, everything should be crossed out except the unit you're solving for, centimeters. It should always work like that. If you don't cross it out, then you're not going to have that work out. So you need to make sure you cross out your units. So what you're going to do here to solve, there's 2 ways you can do it. 1, multiply everything on the top. So you're going to do 3 times 5,280 times 1 times 100 equals, and then multiply everything on the bottom. 1 times 3.3 times 1, put that on the bottom, and then divide those 2 big numbers. That's perfectly fine. Your other way is, if you see these 1s, whenever you multiply or divide by a 1, it's just the same number. So multiply or dividing by a 1 is kind of useless. So what you can do is kind of ignore the 1s and just pay attention to whether it's on the top or the bottom and do like a running calculation. So watch what I do. If you have a number other than 1 on the top, you multiply. If you have a number other than 1 on the bottom, you divide. And you just ignore the 1s. So I would do 3 times, this is on the top, 5,280 divided by 3.3 times 100. So I just multiplied anything on the top, divided anything on the bottom. But again, either way would work. And your answer should be 4.8 times 10 to the 5th centimeters. So again, a number that was required to do scientific notation because it was so big. Okay, last one. Again, steps are the same. Start with what you're given. So I'm given 2 gallons. GAL is the abbreviation for gallons. Make your tic-tac-toe board. It's asking you to go for cups. So I'm going to look at them. That's why this little path sometimes works or helps out. So I'm going to go gallons to quarts to cups. So again, I think that's why sometimes you do this little pathway, this little helper here, and it kind of helps you out to figure out what your path is. 2 arrows mean I'm going to have 2 steps. I'm going to have 2 tic-tac-toe boards. So again, if I want to get rid of gallons, I put that on the bottom in order to cross it out. What I'm looking for first, quarts, goes on the top. And you'll see from your, that is the same as 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. So I mean, either way you want to do it, but according to the chart, it's 0.25 gallons, make sure everything matches, in 1 quart. And then I'm going to get rid of quarts, so put that on the bottom again, always put it opposite. And then I'm going to do cups on the top, what I'm looking for. So I'm going to make sure you do 4 with the cups and 1 with the quart. And again, you can solve this in 2 ways. You can do multiply everything on the top, so 2 times 1 times 4, and then everything on the bottom, 0.25 times 1, or ignore the 1. So you do 2 divided by 0.25 times 4. Either way, you should get the same answer of 32 cups. We're going to do one more challenge here, and it involves speed when you do miles per hour. So if I say a car is going 35 miles per hour, that's how you write that, what is that speed in feet per second? So one thing you have to know is when something's miles per hour, mph, it can be written like this. And same with feet per second can be written like this. So this is actually a case where you're going to have a two-stepper. So I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to start by writing 35 miles. And normally we put a 1 on the bottom because there's nothing under there. But look, there's an hour. And when you do per hour, it's assumed that it's 1 hour. So when you do anything with speed, this is usually what ends up you having to do. So the idea of the word per usually means divide. So you're either going to do some kind of fraction. So when you do miles per hour, it's 35 miles in 1 hour. If you do feet per second, it's how many feet in 1 second. So when you do these problems, you convert the distance, miles, and the time separately, but you still do it all in one line. So what I'm going to do here is pretend for a second that the hour isn't there. I'm just going to get rid of it. And what I'm going to concentrate on is if this was just going from miles to feet, just the distance, just changing miles to feet, how would I do that? Well, I know from before there's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So that's just a single conversion. So just like I was doing before, mile goes on the bottom. When I'm trying to convert into feet on the top, cross miles out. Make sure your numbers and units match. So 5,280 goes on the top and 1 goes on the bottom. So right now I've just converted my distance, miles to feet, what I wanted to get it into. Now that that's done, this 1 hour is still there. We just basically ignored it for now. Now we're going to do the opposite. Now we're going to pretend that the 35 isn't there and we're only going to pay attention to the hour. What's different though is the starting position. So before you were doing always a number on the top over 1. This time the hour is on the bottom with the 1, you're ignoring the 1 on the top. So the same rules apply though. When you want to get rid of a unit, you always go opposite the unit. So if hours is here and I want to get rid of it, the opposite placement would be the top. It does not matter what is here. You kind of skip over that. So if I want to get rid of hours, I put it the next opposite square available in the opposite position, which would be the top. So I'm going to put hours here, and now that crosses out. So I want to go from hours to seconds. Some of you may know that conversion's how many seconds in an hour, but I know all of you can do hours to minutes. So if I want to go from hours to minutes, you do minutes in the only other possible square. So you see how it's opposite of what we've been doing? So when you start on the bottom with the unit, it's just opposite. Same. Opposite corners, and now the minutes is on the bottom. And I know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. And then add 1 more square. Now if I want to get rid of the minutes, I put it again opposite, which just so happens to be on the top. And when I'm looking for seconds goes on the bottom. And I know that 1 minute equals 60 seconds. Now what I want you to notice here is the only two units not crossed out is feet and seconds. And the way that you would write that is feet over second, which again is equal to, if you would write it, feet per second. So that's what you do with these units. You're actually kind of reworking them, so one's on the bottom and one's on the top, and you're actually doing a double conversion. So the same thing here with the math. You can multiply the top, multiply the bottom, and divide, or do it as you go, ignoring the ones. So you do 35 times 5,280 divided by 60 divided by 60. Either way would work, but your answer, so again, with this one, because there's so many numbers involved, maybe you do want to do multiply the top, multiply the bottom, and divide, but it's really up to you. It's really just how comfortable you are with it. So what you should get is 51.3 feet per second. Let me write it down here. And then go ahead and box off your answer. So that's if you're doing, usually it's a speed, a distance over time.